To all members are present, town attorney, town manager. We'll start with the pledge and then get on with business. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The first item on the agenda this morning is the Times Square and Bayside Park update. We're going to have a presentation by our consultants, URMP, for Times Square and Bayside Park.
While Paul's getting set up, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I want to reassure you and the public that all the comments that we've received by email, that you've received by email and shared with me, have all been forwarded to the consultant for consideration and analysis.
Good.
Feedback has been passed on to them.
Very good.
Roger, could you just comment procedurally what we're hearing today? Is this the final? Is it the 60, 90?
This is the 90% to go to 100%. And the importance of that is the sooner we can get to 100%, we could bid the project, have that creates a what's called a shovel-ready project, which in terms of grants, you the highest priority because you're ready to turn dirt, versus a project that may be a great idea but still has a way to go in its developmental cycle. So it won't take a project that does not meet grant criteria and put it to the top, but if you meet the grant criteria and you're shovel ready, that will tend to give you more points than if your project were in a different status.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to clarify too, 90% means right now we're submitting for all of our permits. Once those come in, these projects are ready to go to bid. So this is Times Square.
Introduction.
My name is Paul Benvey, for the record, project manager for DRM.
Paul, you mean, so this design is pretty much complete, pending any changes you may have to make in permitting or?
Correct, or anything we hear today, but
I want to be clear about that. If there's something that you feel needs to be changed, I don't want you to be shy about bringing it to our attention. We can look at that and see about making that change, but understand that we'll be taking a step backwards if we do that. But it may be important enough that it's worthwhile to do that. So I don't want to discourage you if you see something that you have a concern about.
and to dovetail into that, if there's something that's not major, it's something that can be handled down the line. It can be handled through bidding or during construction. So there really shouldn't be anything here unless it's a major issue that would hold this thing from going to construction. That was the plan there that we've talked about for maybe a year and a half now. This is where we stand. This is the iconic sail. We have heard feedback both ways. There's several options we can do here. That is the location where the iconic feature should go in terms of the feel. If we want to change it to a single sail, that's an opportunity. I can show there's a couple other pictures in here of what we've got there. It could be
Not to interrupt you, but could you just go back one slide for 1 second? Because I think this is a very important point. The pedestal is part of the construction project. Pole with a pole with a flag, no pole at all.
Right.
Okay, those are all decisions that can be made when we award the contract. There's still plenty of time for things like that to be vetted out.
That's not going to bog down the what we're doing here today.
Only if we let it bog us down.
Right. Okay.
So this is just, I fast forwarded through here. This is what it might look like if you had a large Fort Myers Beach flag or American flag or whatever we wanted to put there. So that's the pedestal there is there, and we can put a clock on it. We can do anything we want, but that pedestal there is ready to go. We just back up here to, and we'll just walk through. different angles here.
Paul, just since you mentioned the clock, under your scenario that you have here with the flags, which sound like those are optional, would the clock potentially go there then, or would it go somewhere else under your current scenario?
So what we're gonna do is when everyone decides where that clock is gonna go, we're gonna provide electrical hookups, comm stub outs so that it can connect to the atomic clock and it's ready to go wherever we decide as a group to put it. We thought it would go best adjacent to where the selfie spot is here, this large FMB logo that we talked about last time. That can stay, it can go. We heard that it might interrupt the view of the beach and the sunsets. So what we're looking to do here is make that modular and mobile, so it can come out when we want it to come out, we can put it away when we don't want it out there, and the clock can go in that same area. So if we want people to take selfies with the clock, that's one thing we can do, make it permanent. It's really up to you all to what you want there, but for what we're up to, we're gonna provide a stub out location for that clock, and it can be replaced with the same clock, a new clock, a bigger clock, whatever is decided down the line. We're kind of bouncing around here, but these are just kind of some of the shots that we were looking at during the design phase. This is looking towards the pier, adjacent to Palaka, and this photo of it, drawn render, and this is what it looks like with all the bits and pieces, computer generated.
Well, just real quick, the stage that we're seeing, is there any, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyways, is there any acoustical advantages to the stage, or is it really more just function as a stage?
It's a function as a stage. We do have a acoustical sub-consultant that's looked at it, but we're not providing, well, the direction to us was we don't want to provide lighting, we don't want to provide loudspeakers, we want the talent to bring those with them. What we are providing is a drop-down truss that they can attach whatever they want to it, and it gets cinched back up to the top. That truss also can have a curtain, a power curtain, if you will, around it, so that if there's a rainstorm, someone would be able to keep their equipment under the shelter and sheltered from the driving wind.
Yes, my question was the structural design of the stage itself, does it give you any acoustical advantages?
No, not really.
Okay.
We're trying to keep it as open an area as possible to keep the view corridors there. It's more of an aesthetic design than it is
Yep.
it's an open air outside stage. Again, this is about where you'd be if you were standing on the stage looking down towards Estero. Was the artist rendering, and that's kind of where we landed. Between 60 and 90, a lot of the work we've been doing is really tweaking the locations of the tree grates versus the columns for the pergolas and shade sails, and making sure they're not conflicting with windows and doorways, columns, alleyways, and stuff like that.
Are the pergolas white, or are they whatever color we want them to be?
We were recommending them to be white or a slight off-white, like a gray-white, a neutral color, to try to make them uniform and also coordinate with everything else that's going down there. We were of the opinion that the shade sails and the lighting would be what brings the dramatic color. Certainly they can be any color of your choosing. They can be all random colors. For uniformity, we thought this might be the best option for
I
you.
was just asking, yeah, I'm just curious, yeah.
And again, the LED lights that we'll show in a minute can be any color, and they can dance and they can do anything you want, and that can be the color at night. One more point on the shade sail or the pergolas there. If you remember, we have them articulating with the sunlight to create shade underneath, but still maintain that open air feel. We heard feedback that maybe they should be mechanical, manual driven, and the idea is that, of course, they would be manual driven as an override. We still would recommend going with the algorithm, an automatic shade sail, shade structure.
What's going to control that?
What controls the
Well, yeah, you said it was gonna go with the sun. I mean, what is the control device that's gonna control it?
So, my background actually is in solar. I've been in solar for many years, and I did did solar trackers. And there's algorithms that exist that know exactly where you're located on the earth. They know when the sun rises and when the sun sets, and it follows through an algorithm exactly where that sun's position is in the sky and creates 100% shadow through those slats.
It reads, it takes that information along with like the atomic clock, your location, atomic clock, and it adjusts them as time elapses throughout the course of the day.
Or would that,
That's in the control box, and that goes behind the stage.
okay,
The stage has two control boxes. One is a power hookup for the talent to be able to plug into, and then it also has all these controllers go on the back of that stage too, and they're hidden in the landscaping.
Standalone, or does this require like connection to the web?
It requires connection to the internet. But it knows not only what time of day it is, but it knows what time of year it is, and individual day has a different path of the sun through the sky. This is that selfie spot that we've considered. I think if we make it modular, it kind of satisfies everybody's concerns. Can be brought out on special occasions or not, and then also I would think that the clock might want to be right in that area. More photos. So this is the render. We talked about this one last time. This is kind of what it looks like with the uplights. You've got a dramatic lighting that shines up on these shade sails to create whatever effect you might want. The feedback that we got was obviously the turtle-friendly lighting. That's a balance between safety and turtle-friendly lighting. And turtles are interesting creatures. They have they can't see beyond a certain wavelength. So like we can't see in the infrared part of the spectrum, they can't see beyond. So what we've done is we've worked with a lighting manufacturer that creates an FWC compliant light board. So the LED would look like this color during turtle nesting season. And should the town want to, outside of nesting season, you'd be able to turn those off and turn back into that.
Want to work on our boulevard project?
So that, yeah, we'll help out any way we can. Feedback taken, duly noted, and this is our solution. I think it kind of balances the best of both worlds.
are those lights there only going to be either amber or white? They won't be the color changing like?
No,
you're
they're
talking about for
the there's two boards within the LED head. One board can only light that's within FWC compliant range. The other board is completely RGB. So I'm sorry, on the safety lights, that's only white. Everything else is RGB. So up the tree lights, the down lights inside the pergolas, all that is RGB. So whatever color you choose can be white.
But the safety lights, those are the ones you're talking about along the floorboard? On the,
Oh, these come out of the actual heads, the light heads.
so these are amber LEDs,
Amber LEDs, yep.
okay, and then you have other programmable lights, okay.
Yep, and so those amber LEDs, again, the board has 100 LEDs on the board. A typical one. This one has 400 LEDs on it. So half of them are doing the amber safety lights, and the other half are doing white. And you just, the flick of a switch through that control box we talked about, it switches from one way to the other. And this is currently what you are doing out there now, except for it's a manual incandescent bulb change. Same deal we're doing right now, it's just now it's electronical through LED.
I mean, there's some staff in like town hall would be controlling remotely.
Yes.
to get too far into the weeds on the lighting part of it, but would, understand how they're separate, but would each, is it as an entirety have to be that same color, or could each one, do they have their own IP addresses? For, say, each tree, or is it all one color, or could you do like red, green thing?
It's a great question. It can go either way.
Can.
Yeah, so you can control individual lights. It depends on how much we want to spend and how much, the more customization you add to it, the more technologically advanced the person who is operating it. He could be a high-end programmer, or, I could go out there and just flip the switch and turn them all one color. That's Times Square. Let me just look at some other notes I've got here. Yeah, we did receive those, the notes from all the merchants down there. We addressed everything we possibly could. There are some areas, adjacent to Palaka, for example, and at Pete's Timeout where their buildings don't follow the right-of-way line and they kind of diverge, and so that creates an air gap or a rain gap between their building and the pergola. So we are going to, and have designed, awnings that match the pergolas that would be mounted to their buildings. Now, what we're doing is inside the right-of-way and some right-of-entry stuff up to the thresholds of their building and adjacent to the building. I don't believe that the town would be the ones to actually install those on their buildings, but this is the spec, give it to the owner, and they can apply it to their own buildings. There are awnings that are out there now, and it will likely need to be adjusted or changed or switched out to this to make sure that that happens. Some of the other comments were the manual override. Of course, there would be manual override in case it gets stuck, power outage or whatever. We need to crank those things down and flat to keep the rain out. We are looking to spec outlets or a fan box, electrical outlet in the middle of each one of these, so that the tenants would be able to use whatever. If they want a fan, they can get the approved fan that we would spec out to make sure that they're all consistent. They would be able to put that in there, or they could put in Christmas lights or whatever they want to do. It would be up to them.
What's the inside height of these pergolas when they're open?
10 feet.
Well, just for the public who's watching, you just spend a minute talking about what the new surface area will be, what it's composed of, and it looks like it's a little bit multicolored. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So you've got two different colors there, two different colorways. They're a sand cast clay paver, which is primarily made for pedestrian use. It will be able to handle a fire truck as it comes down the fire lane there. And it's a soft feel on your bare foot, so it's a really good product for what we're doing. And also it matches and coordinates. It's the exact same product you have on Old San Carlos. Up to we're just reusing the same exact material, just two different colorways.
Is it pervious at all?
Technically, you can get water to go through it. We're not utilizing it as a pervious. What we're doing is we're sheet flowing water from here, say Palaka, across the. Yeah, bring that in. This is a sample of the paver itself.
Great.
Pass it around to them and touch it. What we're doing is we're sheet flowing across and into this rain garden, and the rain garden would handle the storm water temporarily, and then it would turn to this town's drainage system and be eventually. Show you on this.
I was looking, so you said that the water was going to sheet towards Lynn Hall?
Yes. Yeah, so we have a little bit of right-of-way space there. It would sheet behind the seat walls, and so that behind the seat walls you have a rain garden. I don't know if you can out right there behind the seat wall.
Okay.
So that would be, it's just a way to environmentally friendly as much as possible, treat that water before it gets out and have some natural landscaping.
Does that looks kind of like it's elevated? Garden.
It's I mean, it's a computer-generated thing.
Also, it's a matter of just how it.
Yeah, but it's definitely, our design has it about 6 inches below
Okay.
pavers, yeah. It can definitely retain a little bit of water. It has a control structure overflow drain, and that would end up sending it out to the, if I can show you here. On the left side of this aisle, where the tree grates, the tree line is, there's a trench drain, and so everything flows from north and south. So from Dairy Queen and south, and then to the north, and then from Palaka to the south, all going to run into a trench drain that goes all the way out to Sarah Boulevard.
Not to nitpick, Paul, but that base that we're seeing to the pergola there, and it just looks similar to the one that's holding the proposed sails. What is that made of? It looks, is that just gonna be cement? Is there anything that we could do with, put an attractive tile around that or something?
Yeah,
that-
so the design calls for a split coquina block. So it's a coral limestone block that would be clad on the outside of these. The top, I believe, is flagstone or just concrete cast in place, precast.
Your arches, Jim.
Councilman Arholt, the facade of that is supposed to look like the Carl Arches wall type of look.
You can see that here in the artist rendering a little better. To computer generate a individual natural looking stone, it's a bear. That's what's shown here. And also I believe the below the seat walls as well would have that same cladding.
It's not gonna be a cement
No,
wall,
no,
okay.
no.
'Cause
It looks
that's
pretty
what it looks like, but
utilitarian.
I just want, that helps us, so thank
Yeah.
you. Yep.
Speaking of the drainage, can you touch for the public a little bit on drainage for the pergola, guttering them, how the water would be transferred?
Yeah, so they have internal gutter systems built into them, and what happens with them is, you know, when it rains, they close down, and now they're watertight, so they kind of lay on top of each other, and they channel the water towards one gutter, and then that gutter goes down underground and connects to our trunk line that goes all directions.
What about attaching the businesses there? Will there be any?
That was, yeah, that's the next one on my list here. So we added, the businesses are allowed to, per your code, to sell condensate, rainwater out onto the open square. What we've done is we put yard drains, or just a drain at the end of each alley to make sure that whatever they have, it'll come down that alley, and then, or they can pipe it with their own PVC, bring their water, so AC water and roof drain water, to these pipes, and those would go underground and then pop up into the rain garden on the other side.
We'll supply an area for them to supply their runoff into.
Yes, and that's, when I worked on the downtown Fort Myers project, the streetscape project there, we had to go back into those alleys, and in some cases, we would get right of entry to go all the way back and put a few more drains in there, and in some cases, we could only come right up to the edge of the right-of-way, drop that drain, and then you'll see sometimes in downtown, there will be a PVC pipe that runs off the edge of the building and right into that drain. So we know there's an issue at the Dairy Queen there. There's some condensate that hits the pavement and is creating a slick, so we'll catch that as well.
All these palm trees that are here, obviously those look relatively mature. What's gonna go in practice? Are they gonna be,
Yes.
how tall will they be initially?
Specimen, so they're 35 feet tall, as a good number. The
So they'll
existing,
be the one going in?
Yeah,
They'll
so-
already be 35 feet?
yes, they're pure, they're specimens coming off. I would like to try to reuse the ones that are there, if that's possible. Finding a contractor that'll guarantee that those will survive the moving, that's a different story. So, ideally, we reuse what we've got out there if it doesn't work out through bidding, and someone can, with new specimens, that would make sense.
I guess
Yeah,
the-
these are mature trees.
That was my question. The new, whatever, if we do put new trees in, they're not gonna be 3 feet tall, they'll be, okay, all right,
This is what it'll look like when we cut the ribbon.
pretty good, all right.
That's pretty much everything I've got for Times Square. One comment that we got from the merchants again was the leasable area. We wanted to either maintain it as best as we could, and we really did try to make sure that these pergolas lined up with their existing areas. And in most cases, we were able to do that. I can tell you that the fire lane is required to be 20-foot wide. And so it did create a little bit of an encroachment into their area. So we're talking less than 10% is what they would end up losing through this. But they are getting pergola and sale and things like that. So it's commensurate to what they have right now. And you should be able to see just about the same number of tables underneath as to what they're due right now.
Go back to the what'd you call it, the selfie spot, the FMB sign there? You said it's gonna be mobile. Where is it gonna get stored? If it's pulled out of there, is there a place behind the stage it's gonna slide into, or?
I'm gonna let Chelsea answer that question.
It looks pretty big right there.
Could either be stored on site to move in and out, or we've got plenty of equipment that you all have graciously for the past years to remove it and bring it back here to town hall.
What can be made as heavy or as light as we want. It can be hollow aluminum, sheet aluminum that's bent and painted this way, or it could be concrete, or it could be solid and there's different options we can.
Could it be used, I mean, is the size appropriate where it could be used as like a backdrop on the stage? Alternative placement?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can maybe shrink it down or enlarge it, whatever it would be to make it scale and look right behind the stage.
I would really be interested in that idea as well, because it really blocks that ocean is everything, and you can't, hate to block, I'm sorry, golf. The golf is everything. It's spectacular, and to incorporate that logo as part of the stage where people could still, because we're not gonna have a band up there all the time, people could still get a picture and then not block the golf, that would be great.
Okay.
Though I do have to kind of counter with that a little bit. I mean, I think the idea of using it for different things could be handy. I mean, to be able to move it. So if there's a show, you can put it there and then people taking pictures of the band, they see it. But I do think that just having it in itself, that a lot of people are gonna want to take pictures in front of it with the sunset behind it. I think it, looks like where it sits, I don't see it being that big of a thing blocking the sunset. And I think it would be, it would be a great marketing thing for the town because it would be going up all over social media.
That just, our thought was that if we make it mobile, we could, put it on a boat for the boat parade, we could put it on the, on a vehicle for the shrimp parade, so, we would have a multitude of ways of trying to use it. So it's, getting it the right scale is important, but the idea was to be able to use it in a variety of venues.
Where's Waldo?
So, just to let you know, we are coordinating with 3 other major projects that are going on in the same area that will probably be under construction at the same time. Right now, we've got the Old San Carlos Signal that's slated to start months, okay. Then we've got, obviously TPI and Margaritaville that's going to be starting here shortly. We have the bridge approach starting shortly. We have utility replacement on Crescent that's starting shortly. So there's going to be a lot of activity down here at the same time. And then also, as we talked, as Roger mentioned earlier, there are opportunities that come up when projects get to this 90-100% stage. And so I know that there's opportunity for one that's coming up, but it doesn't start till next year. I'm going to throw that out there that timing of this and the construction, we're ready to go when you're ready. We can turn dirt this summer if we wanted to, but funding and opportunities may push that to next year. Also, I know the merchants were, one of the things I read was that they didn't want to go to construction this year. They can recover from COVID. So that's up to you guys. You tell us when you want to go. I'm sure you'll rely on Roger for some direction on that, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Our current thoughts on that is to get the project bid, get a price, and as part of our bid, ask the contractor to hold the price for a year. And that would give us time to explore the grant market, get in line with the preferences of some of the vendors and business people out there. So that's kind of our current thinking about that. And of course, some of these items, there's long lead, ordering of certain items, so, we could be doing that prior to actually going out there and turning dirt. So that would give us the flexibility. But I think it's important for us to understand the pricing as we try to fit this and several other projects in our budget, that we understand what the potential cost is. We have a engineer's estimate of cost, but we really don't know what the market will bear till we bid it.
I got a question, Roger, just for timing issues. All of the things that Paul just talked about as far as the other construction that are going on, was all that decided roughly when it was going to be happening the time that the Times Square merchants talked about delaying it a year. I mean, I guess my question is, do they know that now all of that construction is gonna be happening at the same time, as opposed to this could go before some of that other stuff?
I don't know what they know, but I know that we've been coordinating with these other projects that are going on, and I said 6,000, half dozen. You know, do you start now and then the next year you're under construction again, or do you try to push it all through at one time and a cluster of projects going on? No, that's maybe on my pay grade.
Yeah, so we're having those discussions. The problem that we're having and will have is that we have a tentative schedule. They have a tentative schedule. All of these projects have tentative schedules. So just by way of example, DOT was going to make a presentation to you about the status of that project, and they had to push it back because they had to do some more field work to be prepared to be able to do that. So while there'll be a lot of construction in the area, our signal that we're putting in at Old San Carlos, and that's really going to be done, I believe, before any significant construction by any of these other projects. Maybe TPI might start their demolition, but that's about it. But I believe they're far enough away that they wouldn't interfere with one another. Then, you know, to the extent that TPI does stay on schedule and does their construction, where we have to be careful is when they're bringing in sort of steel and concrete. That's obviously going to be a lot of transportation involved with that. We have to avoid that window. But once they're sort of on their property and working, they'll be having trucks and materials and stuff delivered, but it won't be a major traffic issue conflict. So while it's all in the vicinity of downtown, I'm confident that we can sequence these things to have minimal impacts on one another.
Well, I, for one, agree with the manager's timeline on this. Was primarily because that's what the merchants in Times Square wish. It all seems to dovetail together, you know. So that would be my, you're looking for consensus on the timing. That's the way I feel about it. I think, Dan, you're nodding your head as well.
I kind of understand too that, you know, it's like, the way Roger coins it is there's a sweet spot for applying for grants. I want, you know, as much as we can get as far as grants. And by doing it this way, you're stretching at that sweet spot for a while, but, you know, being shovel ready for a long time. One thing that seems to be a concern now, I know I talked to some builders and some other, you know, retailers and whatnot, and some of the supply chains are a little sticky now, and it's hard to get some steel and some other things. So maybe that'll clear up in a year or two. It might make it easier.
Well, again, there's one of the things about these types of projects is getting in the manufacturing cycle things. Doesn't necessarily mean you're installing them or you know, digging holes or whatever, but just like all the pergolas are going to be manufactured and shipped here. We can get them manufactured, we can get them stored and then say, hey, we need them next week, they'll get here. That's what the year gets you, rather than having them on a critical path of a project theoretically starting in May or something.
It gives us another year to talk about the sales.
Too. That too.
Anything else? Are we all in agreement that we're good with this 90% plan here? Yes.
Can we just also have a consensus that we don't want the sales? Not have them show up in the drawings and confuse the public?
I think Roger did a good job of explaining that that's not necessarily something that's gonna hold this up. Whether they're gonna go up there or not doesn't necessarily have to be decided right now. The infrastructure will be there should they go up or not go up. Easy to understand.
Kill it yet, Bill.
No, just, you know, I think there's gonna be people looking at the designs going, are you obsessed with the fact that the sales are on these drawings?
Fair point. It gives me pause. It seems like if it's gonna be a year wait, it'd be nice to have how we want it designed would be the public face of this project for the next year. I'll support the will of the council on that.
Let's be clear. So they're going to be in the construction contract as a bid alternate, meaning that they'll get a price for the work, and then there'll be a price if you want the pole, add this to the contract amount, you want the sales, add that to the contract amount. For us to be able to hit those prices, we have to give potential bidders specifications. So if we take them out of the plans and specifications, you're making an irrevocable decision now, which is fine if you're ready to do that. The way we're suggesting is move forward. When we get to the actual contract award, it becomes that point of decision-making, what's in and what's out with these types of items.
Probably want to move on down the road.
Do it. So, key point that I discussed about the pavers, those are the pavers, again, that are going down Old San Carlos. The light fixtures that we talked about will be also going down Old San Carlos, and as we go down Old San Carlos to
Can you just go
Bayside.
back that one picture real quick? One more. So you can kind of see it on the left-hand side, right in front of the woman who's walking towards us. That's the circle light fixture that you picked. It's with this kind of bent arm coming down. I hope you can see it in the picture.
Why? There you go.
There it is. It's just next to the gentleman.
Cobra's head.
I have a question about that, way it looks. Walking down Old San Carlos, as you get closer down to Bayfront Park, look at it now, the street is very well illuminated. The sidewalk is extremely dark. We make this a two-headed fixture so that it illuminates the sidewalk as well as the street?
I believe this does have a two-headed option.
It does. 'Cause I just, if you haven't had a chance to walk down there, from SOB's south, it's pretty dark.
Yeah, it is, it is. I have had a chance to walk down there, it's a little dark. We'll do a complete photometrics on that. I think it's not really part of our scope, but we can add that on Old San Carlos to see what that might look like. We have done the photometrics on Times Square and Bayside. So those will be well lit. All right, here we go to Bayside. Bayside Park is my next favorite job. We modified the design. You may remember this went back and forth. All kinds of different things were going on here. We once had a splash pad. We once had a building. We've always maintained that the pavilion in the back is bulky, and we would want to replace that with a later stage, one that's a little less encumbering on the view. Other things we've heard for sure is we like the rain garden idea. Again, that just provides a little bit of a drainage offsetting there, natural vegetation. We heard about the veterans tributes in the foreground there within the rain garden. Heard that might be interesting to see at 11 o'clock on November 11th. Maybe some kind of shadow event could happen. And the way they're set up here could happen. The cottages to the north, south of us here on this. And so that we've actually looked at all the eight angles on there, and we were able to provide that event. So if you wanted to have on 11/11, you wanted to have an event down there, those cross over, and you can get almost like a Stonehenge effect where those cast a shadow onto that seat wall, and kind of cool celebration could happen. I don't know, celebration word, an event could happen. Part of the change that we did here is we also minimize the impact to what we've got out there right now. We're actually looking to everything within the trench drains. I don't know if you've been down there, but you've got the fountain that runs down the middle, and then you've got trench drains, and you've got these tree grates with trees in them, and then the sidewalks to the outside of the right-of-way. We're trying to minimize the impact of this, so everything that we're looking to do would be replacing just what's between the trench drains. Fountain goes away, the pavilion goes away, and replaced with turf at the stage and the ring. There will be some construction going on in those brick pavers there, paver bands, ancillary to the project, but those existing pavers would be stored and then reused for this project. Again, they're the same pavers that we've seen. They're the same ones that go up and down Old San Carlos, are the same pavers that you'd see there for some consistency.
Mentioned a lot of things that you had gotten input on before.
Mhm.
I have been unwavering in my request for a shade tree. Every time I've mentioned it, I don't see it.
Okay.
And I don't know that I've been vetoed in that. Maybe behind the scenes I am, but one of the things I love about downtown Fort Myers, you know, you go around the courthouse area, there's some beautiful shade trees. People enjoy them.
I have to agree, as one of my items too, is, you know, I understand that some people want this to be as visually minimized as possible, but I think trees add to the visual interest and don't take it away. So I think that having shade trees or that rain garden would be an addition.
I'm not saying you need to have them all the way down. A shade, you know, a mature shade tree can be a focal point.
Yes, so I have not vetoed you.
Okay? Well, I'm wondering if someone else has, because
No, not that I'm aware of. So, we were not present. I think this was discussed a few months ago. And we heard that we wanted to provide less visual obstructions and a shade tree. And those are kind of contradictory, so. If
not at all. I have shade trees in my backyard. You can see directly to the canal. They're trimmed up, they're mature, they're,
So we can definitely add it back. We removed it because we were trying to make it a little more see-through. We can certainly add it back. It's,
Well, I think the point of confusion, the team might have considered the comment when there were shade trees, rain garden, took those out to try to address the visual issue, but that's not what the vice mayor and council are saying. I think the line of palms is what they're saying is, we would like to see some shade trees. Correct?
I'm not even particular about where you put it, to tell you the truth.
Well,
That would be fine.
That would keep the view.
Well, again, if you trim them up, there's still a view corridor.
No,
I don't get this,
No, I said it
people
would.
keep saying it's
I
not,
said it would keep,
there's a view corridor wherever you would put it.
we just, this may be a bad interpretation on our end, but we tried to provide those shade sails there in lieu of a shade tree. Certainly add a shade tree back. It's not an issue.
When we talk about the visual, to me, nothing's changed on the front. Is this where the monuments are going to go, or is this just a idea of where they potentially
This
could
is
put them?
one location that, and this was to address the comment on perhaps having a solar event that would happen on the 11th. It's just one area where they could go. You've got the six now branches of military, and they're all represented there. I think for where we're at, we would like to provide a place that's agreeable to everyone on council and the town as a whole, and that would be designed and put in after construction. For us to design something that everyone would like, it would not be something we could do, but I think there's some groups out there that could do that, and would just provide a place that everyone's agreeable to. And
I'm just concerned with, Councilor Veach has probably had more conversations about this than I have, about the accessibility of it. If this is what they decided that they wanted to do, it's in a rain garden that they're going to have to traverse through to really.
Well, no, I think what we're trying to do, and these plans were under development prior to Council Beach's suggestion that the community get together and come up with the Veterans Tribute. So our plan is to have this as sort of a backup plan. If the folks he's working with, there can't put something together or put something together that the council perhaps may not care for, we have a backup plan. So this would be a bid option that we would have in our back pocket that we could invoke at the time of award or theoretically 10 years later, if we wanted to, if nothing else comes to fruition that people like or are comfortable with.
Let me just interject with the status. I have, Forrest Critcher is working to form a committee with like the VFW and other veterans groups. And I think that the idea that was discussed is to come up with a certain pad like we did with the monument in Times Square and saying, here's 25 square feet. You know, this is the place where it goes. These are the limitations on what it is. And have them take care of it. Get them involved in the project and let them get some ownership. I think that another idea is to keep with that plan, but show them whatever the idea is that the designer has and have that as one of their options.
I'm not opposed to what's up there. I'm just, if they were more towards the edge of the, not in the center of it.
Well, they're more visible from the seat wall side. They're closer to the seat wall.
Okay.
They're still, and any option that would be written on there would be visible and legible from wherever you are around it. Size that appropriately, or recommend that it be sized appropriately.
You know, there is, I mean, I don't know, I haven't done the geometry of knowing where the sun's going to be coming from at 11 o'clock on November 11th. But, you know, the idea that he said that you can still do some kind of simple integration with the shadows so that there's something on the seawall where those shadows would line up at 11 o'clock on November 11th, becomes an event, a potential event.
Our goal was to not limit the future options. So, depending upon what design they might come up with, we have the areas. Can you go back one slide, please? We have the area between these where we don't have a light pole. We have that little corner area. We have areas back alongside the stage that theoretically could work depending upon what they come up with and where this fits within the scope of the park. But at the end of the day, if for some reason best intentions of all of us fail, we wanted to have a backup plan, which we shown.
Could I get more details on the monument part of this that you have? And so I can, send that to the.
Yeah, we can give them a place that shows the available areas that we foresee that, depending on what they might pick, would fit.
And also, I think for consideration, if a monument like this doesn't go through, instead we come up with a more of a monolithic kind of monument. And for me, I wouldn't mind seeing a shade tree in the spot there, because I think that it is a park. People look at it down the street, I think looking down and seeing trees, to me, says park as opposed to just an extension of the street. This is more like a plaza, I would say.
I think we have what, like
12.
12. So let's, for sake of moving on, let's say that we want to have no less than 4 or 6 shade trees, if we can, no less than 4, maybe try to get to 6.
Yeah.
Okay, is that a good objective for us to strive through?
And, if we would get bigger ones, I'd go with fewer even if you want to pony up for the larger tree. And by the way, our town tree is the gumbo limbo, which we really,
That was the species we had originally in the plan
Good.
months
Good.
ago.
So yeah, we'll definitely put that back. That's not an issue, and we will separate them appropriately.
I got a question about the stage. I mean, it's nice, it's open now, which is kind of nice. is there a huge cost difference with the roof of that stage to make it even less, less bulky and go with something like the open vanes like that are in Times Square? You could close it if there's a concert, open it so it's more open airy. A huge cost difference or a structural issue?
I'd have to see what these bids come in at for this structure here, but, for a shade sail or a shade structure that's that big, it's probably gonna be right around the same price.
Not necessarily shade, I'm talking about the mechanical.
Yeah. So the shade, it's a shade structure with the pergola, right? Versus
Okay.
the state,
Got
versus
it.
the
No,
stage.
no, I think he just wants a pergola roof on this structure.
Oh,
Right.
Is that correct,
okay.
Counselor?
Okay, I didn't understand it. I would say that can be done. It wouldn't likely be round. I go back to a square shape, but I'd have to look into that. But I would say now if you're just switching out the top, this articulating structure, that's probably going to cost more than what you see. This also has the structural rigidity handling wind and also the load of the equipment that would be put up on trusses.
I think I know what you're kind of going for there, Dan, but it does seem like the more complicated you make that top, the more structure you're gonna have to put on there, hold it in place.
Well, and if
Maybe
we're
we'll make
going
it
for
even bulkier.
consistency, we have a roundish stage at the other
right.
end.
This is literally the same exact stage that you have at the other end, only 2/3 the size. Also, we took out the slats behind it. The one at Times Square has the slats. This one, we took it out, again, to help with that view.
But is that stage large enough to accommodate what we want to do down there? Hold a band?
It can hold a band. I mean, it's not gonna hold a 10-piece band, but it'll hold a 3-piece band.
Just thinking that then some of the events we have, Taste of the Beach and whatnot, that to realize.
What size band are you anticipating?
That you would wanna make sure we could accommodate.
Usually they only have up to 4, don't they? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen more than a 4-piece band.
Four or five maybe, but
We're putting the stage over the fountain, isn't that large, and everybody seemed to be able to fit onto it.
I'll just confirm that it holds 4 to 5 and,
Report back.
Fencing.
A lot of turf there to do some damage.
Yeah, we did provide the hardscape surface there in front of the stage, accessibility reasons, and also, yeah.
Paul, did you say that space in front of the stage there, is that gonna be artificial turf or is that grass?
Artificial turf.
Like an AstroTurf?
Nicer than AstroTurf. Nicer than what you can get at Home Depot.
Then the purpose of that is just to be able to,
Ease of maintenance.
maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, you're not fertilizing it. You're not having any runoff with that. You're not having to go out there and mow it. It just stays there, maintenance free. Wears out, you replace it.
is it pervious?
That one there, yes, it is. It has, it's a pervious carpet. It has a base underneath it that can percolate through it. Still are providing some slope for heavy rain runoff to get to the trench drains that are existing on either side of it. So one of the items we heard from the merchants was they wanted to have light shows or have some significant lighting. These shade sails would have the similar effect that you have down at Times Square, where the uplighting really makes it vibrant. They're RGB lights. They can change the color you want. They can dance to the music. They can do kinds of different things.
elaborate on that, Paul, because we've seen some of these examples that they put forth and they're pretty impressive. And you say you can do something similar with these sails?
Absolutely, yeah. That's been since 18 months ago when we started working on these projects. Have all of these RGB lights that can change color. You can, for St. Patrick's Day, they can be a green color. For Valentine's Day, they could be pink and red. They can change color. You can have them modulate. You can have them do all kinds of different things.
If you had live music, you could have the lighting modulating then?
You can, yes. So they have the ability to pick up the sound
Going back to the
waves
70s, yeah.
and flash with the beat. I don't know if that's what we would definitely would want, but it's the possibility you can use. Or you can just have them fade in and out on a schedule and just have some kind of visual effect.
Any pictures as to what that looks like, or any real-life examples?
Yeah, I mean, we were shared real life examples from
I mean, of these,
these.
of your
It's
concept.
the same exact thing. It's a light that goes into the tree grate and at the base of the poles, and it just shines up on there.
Okay.
I don't have if you'd like to see a rendering, I mean, I could probably pull a rendering up to make that happen.
I think I get the idea. Yeah, thank you.
Essentially what you've got at Times Square.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, Paul, it's exactly the idea of the community. It's
Anything else? So that's all I have for you. We will put,
But Paul, just, could you, and maybe this isn't part of your scope, maybe this is Roger's scope, but can you discuss a little bit what's going to happen along the shoreline? Not part of your world?
that is just outside of our world. Yeah, that's,
I think we have a picture showing, don't we have a picture showing that?
it's done, it's to be done by others. We have those
Yeah.
plans that we're coordinating with them. Edge of it right there. Done it in the past. You can kind of see behind there, it connects Nervous Nellies to Snug and,
You want to comment on that, Roger, in terms of that being a walkable, usable space for the public? Or just
Yes,
what your vision is?
Well, that's our intention, to have that connectivity. As you can see, in the picture, the future dinghy dock, where you see those two boats kind of pointed in on that sort of straight coming in. So that'll be done as part of our mooring field expansion project. And definitely our goal to maintain that connectivity, continuity along sort of that baywalk. The only thing is we have to figure out the engineering from grade down to the dinghy dock, and that's reason why the plans are not sort of a more developed stage as we go through that permitting.
Is that, help me understand, is that pier that's on the shoreline, is that all public that goes along all those businesses, or is that
Well, the
their-
one on the left and the one on the right are private with the associated businesses. The one in the center of that picture would be a new one that we would be putting in.
Sorry, I didn't mean to use the word pier, but the walk space, is there a public access walk space that goes in front of those businesses as well?
We have an access corridor on Nervous Nellies for sure, and I believe I'm not sure if we do on Snug Harbor or not, but my recollection, it is walkable. I don't know if they're gonna say, you're not a customer, you can't walk here. I would be shocked if they did that. But I don't know that we sort
They
of
gave
have.
us the public restroom back there. I don't think they could argue that you're not allowed to walk back there since.
Well, yeah, I'm not interested in a dispute. I'm interested in, this is a really, I think, a neat part of the project, because if there's music out there, whether it be at the stage or at Nervous Nellies, people being able to walk along there at night, seeing the bay.
Council, I couldn't
could be
agree with
really
you
nice.
more. You know, I think this is the synergy of having a CVS on one corner and a Walgreens on another. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Very good.
My understanding is that the whole permitting thing is a big, is the long tent in the pole now. So right now, right, we're permitting for the mooring field. And then once that's completed, then we'll start permitting for the boardwalk and the, and that's a state, that's a DFWC thing, and it takes.
Right, but it's not typically no, it's always just a getting the plans to where they'll approve them process. So, so there may be, we submit a plan, they comment, we resubmit, they comment. So that's a time and process issue, but it's very rarely would they come back and say, no, you can't do it. So, we're very optimistic that this will be integrated, maybe not at the same time the park is constructed, but shortly thereafter.
Okay,
These are at 90%. Again, we'll be ready to go to construction this summer, if that's your will. And how do you want me to handle the last change here with adding the specimen? Do you want us to come back and show it what it might look like before we get there, or
You just like take this drawing and maybe just
we can circulate it?
spot some
me with the trees.
measurement trees in there and,
What do you think? We don't have to have another meeting
No,
for
we don't have to
that.
have another presentation.
just
You
know
could
that
just
they're gonna be
circulate
there.
it.
Gonna be there, yeah, circulate it.
Okay, yeah, we definitely want to make sure that doing what you want.
How about the
before we go to
timeline
construction.
for, construction?
So
Sounds pretty good.
I'm guessing, it'll be that 4-month range, could, just, it depends on the contractor and how quickly they can run. So if we were to go under construction, probably NTP for construction and procurement would be May, and they would start construction probably May, wrapped up before the end of the year.
so that's the early start. And then the late start could be whatever the council wants it to be, up to a year later. And after that, we would have to negotiate with the contractor to see if they could hold their prices or a percentage increase or something if we wanted to go beyond a year.
Be nice to get one of these started. So
Yes.
if this one is the one,
Right,
yeah.
as soon as possible,
Okay.
don't you think?
I do have, you know, what, I'm just still kind of stewing this thing about, you know, the fake turf versus grass. If we have shade trees up there, that means they're gonna drop leaves, have to vacuum, which is just similar to mowing. So, I mean, what are the real advantages of using fake turf over grass, besides not having to mow it and?
Well, what we could do is this, you know, we can, just look at having a bid option for that, and we can look at the prices, and we'll know when we can make that decision down the road. You know, if
I'm
you-
just kind of curious for discussion, you know, I mean,
The answer is, there is benefits to both, Counselor, and, you know, I don't know which of the pros and cons, which would weigh more heavy in your mind. You know, our inclination at this point was, most of the shade and, you know, permanent shade structure over most of this area, would do better being artificial turf, but we could look at it, at the bid award and make a decision.
right.
Paul?
You
Thank you
guys?
so much.
Paul?
Very good. Okay, the next item is, review of Laguna Shores Channel Dredge Project. Roger, you want to start us out on this one?
Okay, councilors, we have been approached by the residents who live adjacent to Laguna Shores Channel and are impacted by the fact that that the channel has infilled in and around Buccaneer Lagoon. This had happened previously, and a cooperative arrangement was worked out with the adjacent property owners to address the problem, I believe, back in 2012, thereabouts. Fast forward, 7, 8 years later, and we have a similar condition. I'm being told that they can't get their vessels through the channel in most tides at this point in time without hitting bottom. So we began the process to analyze what it would take to address the issue. That's the item before you. And it's a way to sort of dovetail into the conversation with the property owners, you know, how they envision this cooperative relationship for this future project might work.
The benefit of the public at home watching, could you just give a brief scenario or description of how this was addressed in the past?
Well, I don't know that I know all of those details. I know that a cooperative relationship was worked out where there was a cost-sharing program with the private property owners. Some of them are here, and they may have more history than I have on this.
Yes.
But I do want to remind you that we have been talking, this council and the prior council and even the prior council, have been talking about this concept of sort of localized neighborhood improvements and how the town address that. I had previously had circulated sort of a loosely structured neighborhood improvement district type concept to the council. So that's how this project could get accomplished. The only real decision is, A, does the town want to participate, and perhaps to what extent financially? Then, assuming the majority of the property owners support the concept, we have a path forward.
Just gonna, sure, but I think the idea and the way, you know, you already have a history of this project, seems like a good place to try to develop this further. One problem I really have with looking at this proposal is cost, because 7 years ago, I think the table that I saw was $21 to $32 a square yard. This is $90 to $180, or sorry, a cubic yard. Material moved, and then the beach, I know it's a bigger scale, it's like 10 something a yard. So in 7 years, I have a hard time believing that the costs have gone up that much.
That's the engineer's estimate. We don't know. You know, we won't know till we bid it. Could be somewhere in between, as you suggest, Counselor. So, you know, I think, you know, do you embark on the first step, which is outlined, get us to the point where we do get bids, and that becomes a known number versus a construction engineer's estimate. There may be a percentage that, you know, the council's comfortable with on behalf of the town. There may be an amount. Same thing for the residents. There may be a percentage or amount. There may be an amount that just might be too high. I don't know. But this is the beginning step of how to get there and find out all those things.
We don't typically take public comment at these management and planning meetings. With us today, we do have former Councilman Bruce Butcher here, who was also a resident down there, is familiar with the history of the project. So in my latitude here, the chair, if it's okay with the fellow members here, I'd like to invite Councilman Butcher up to give us a brief history here and whatever else comments he may have. Okay?
Yes, please. Very helpful.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be easy. All right,
You have to identify yourself, sir.
what'd you say?
You have to identify yourself for the record.
Bruce Butcher for the record.
Thank you.
I like this better with having that microphone to. All right, the brief history. This started in 2000 at the concern of the residents of Laguna Shores that the entryway to the Buccaneer Lagoon was blocked. In 2005, the town council approved going forward with a plan to dredge a channel. It was agreed that the residents would pay 60%, the town would pay 40%. In 2008, it was brought to council again. Apparently there was new council members, and they also agreed to go forward with this, residents paying 60% and town 40%. I don't know how that was divided up. I don't have any background on that. But I would like to point out again that this lagoon is a natural waterway. It's not a man-made situation. It's not a man-made canal. It's a natural waterway that's used by the general public, commercial enterprises, and law enforcement, environmental people. And I think that might have had some bearing on the fact that the town paid part of it. I wasn't around that. Residents wanted a channel went directly into the lagoon. However, in the wisdom of the aquatic preserve staff, they insisted that the initial channel be dredge by the drawbridge and come down in front of homes and then finally get to the lagoon entrance. Now, it was interesting that Barry Kiker, when he was mayor, he wrote a letter to Bill Nelson, says the dredging project was completed in 2009. This is by the bridge. After a period of several years required to garner all state of Florida and federal permits. Within 3 to 4 months of completion, the new channel was significantly compromised by fill-in from shifting sands. So after less than a year, the new channel was filled to the point that the bottom was out of the water at low tide. So the residents didn't want it there, but some other jurisdictions did. So this was a letter to Bill Nelson trying to get help in getting a permit to re-dredge. So it was finally,
Bill Nelson being the former mayor of Benita Springs and also the contractor
I'm
who
sorry, no.
builds docks.
I'm sorry, this is Bill Nelson, the senator.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Ben Nelson. I'm
He
sorry.
was trying to get help from the
Bill Nelson.
senator to get the Corps of Engineers to advance the permit quickly.
I misheard
So
you.
the original dredging that went by the bridge cost $292,600. We have 100 residents that have water access in Laguna Shores. We were each assigned or assessed $1,800 each, $180,000. Dredging was $300,000, 60% for the residents, $180,000. The math works. So that's how the first assessment was made. The second dredging in a more reasonable location occurred. I think that was $269,000, something like that. And that included putting in channel markers, making it a navigable channel. And as it turns out, the West Coast Inland Navigation District, I can never say that, paid for that. I don't know how that came about, who convinced them to do that, but it is now an established channel with channel markers. They paid for it. So whether or not they will now pay going forward or not, I don't know, but it's worth talking to them about.
This is what, like in 2013, 2014?
2012. 2012. So that's when the second dredging occurred. $169,000. We had a permit for 5 years that ended in 2016 from the Florida Environmental Protection. So obviously the construction was done within that time frame. Then there was a maintenance agreement the town had with an engineer that every 2 years the engineer would survey the channel. And unfortunately, that expired in 2016 and the town didn't renew it. So we're left to our own initiative to bring the matter forward back to the town now, point out the fact that the thing is plugged up again. So again, this is a public benefit because it's a natural lagoon. It's about the environmental impacts there and all amenities and things and the tour boats that go back there, et cetera. So the question today is, what would it cost to really fix this problem, have continued maintenance? And I agree with Bill that why the costs should go up 3 or 4 times. There's nothing but labor, equipment. There's no materials per se. There's not concrete. There's not asphalt. There's not lumber. And I think gas is a lot cheaper today than it was back then. And we'd also like to get started on this, at least getting the permit started. Who knows how long getting this permit might take? Is it going to take 5 years, 6 months, 2 years? I don't know. The fact that we had a permit in the past may make it easier this time. In fact, there was a Yeah, I got it in the notebook. There was an emergency permit issued by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection based on some storm action that caused the channel to, oh, maybe there's a chance, I don't know if it's here about this, then obviously I do, but getting the permitting started, I think, is very, very important to this project. I believe the neighborhood would be interested in participating in the cost fixed. Split might be the appropriate thing, or better yet, West Coast Inland Navigation System pay for it, or some other grant. Obviously, not paying for it. Bring it. So, any questions that I could?
Questions for Bruce?
Is the Laguna Shores Homeowners Association the group that you kind of communicate with?
Yes.
Okay. Are you the president of that group?
Anymore.
Okay.
I've retired from all public life.
Okay.
Aspire to be there one day, Bruce.
Maybe you could communicate to the president that we need to have someone with authority to speak for you all as a group. I'm in favor of going forward with this with the idea that if we can't get funding, that we would do a 60-40 again, but only if we get some kind of authorized word back from the homeowners that says, yes, we're willing.
We can,
The other thing, Roxanne, is starting an improvement district with town. It's more involved with besides just an association.
I understand they have a functioning group that we could start communicating with now, which is what I'm,
We would work through the improvement district to set up the system where the homeowners would pay their share, and how that would work for the life of the payment, whether it's, payment over years as or a lump sum, or however it might work, depending on the amount. The immediate question is, initial $10,000, does, that's obviously something that we can get started as the former council, or, request to get the ball rolling. And then if the project goes forward, once we get to the point of getting bids, we would get a credit based on whatever the final financial arrangement is for that $10,000. If it doesn't go forward, then of course it would be a town expense. To the extent we get a grant, the grant would come off the top. Covered everything, great. If it covered less than everything, whatever was left would be divided up between the two parties. And, we would proceed under that general basis and continue to work with the Homeowners Association to put all the mechanisms in place that when we have a bid, and assuming that the council and the homeowners agree that it's a price each one to take on, we can put the financing package together to go along with the contract award.
Any other questions, Jim?
Just, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but by the way, just for the record, I am also supportive of some kind of a cost-sharing arrangement with the neighborhood association, particularly if we can't get the grant that funds it all, which would be ideal. I'm just curious, as a sidebar, all that dredging that's done, all that sand that will be dredged, is there any chance that that sand could be utilized for beach renourishment on the south end of the island? Is that part of the equation in the past? Is that something that could?
We don't believe so. But we won't know that for sure a little further down the road, but our early estimations is that would not be the case. It would have to be held somewhere. We'll see.
and that's what happened last time. It was dredged out, dumped on a vacant lot, and then trucked away.
Was that because it's guilty or not the right type of fuel to be used?
So once it's dredged, it would be tested, and generally speaking, our expectation is it would not be beach sand. It have other fill purposes, but would not be beach sand.
Just curious, yeah, but I'm comfortable proceeding as discussed.
But they also, when they, typically when you get a not perfect fill like they did in the Matanzas Pass, so they just put it offshore and let nature clean out the sediments.
So one of the things that when we get to the point of the bid and working with the engineer is you look at all those disposal options. And you try to find the one that's most cost effective.
Does seem like just, I think that, I don't know how the sequence has to work here, Roger, but do you have to get the permitting and design engineering before you can get a price?
Yes.
Because I'm guessing the price, because I think it'd probably be a pretty important decision factor for the residents of someone like Bruce here, that, if you're asking to pay 1,800, that's one thing. If you're talking about 18,000, it may be a different price point altogether. On the outside, we're talking about almost a 10-to-1 margin. But I concur. I think we should march forward with, I think, getting the permitting design, discussing it with the board of the association, and getting a real price so we can go forward.
I think we're all in agreement about that, it sounds to me. I'm in agreement as well. So the question is, I think what the burning question is, when? It's in their minds, it's an emergency situation now. So I think they want this to be expedited as soon as possible.
Right, so what we would do, Mr. Mayor, in light of that, and the comments of your colleagues, is that we would put the authorization to proceed with the basic services for permitting plans and specifications on the next agenda for council's approval.
Do you have any
And,
idea, to answer their question about time frame for permitting? 6 months, a year? Ed can help answer that, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the consultant that we've been, is extremely experienced in this, and not only in this activity, but at this location. So, when we have the agenda item, we'll get his best estimate. I think he's the one, since he has the most familiarity with it, to be able to say how long he thinks it would.
Roger, I hate to do this, but I'll ask you anyways. Do you have any speculation? Are you optimistic that this entity that former Councilor Butcher referenced could pay for it all? Is that an optimistic vision, or is that a pessimistic one, given the times that we're in?
I think that there's possibility that we can get a contribution towards the project. I don't believe we're going to be in a situation where we can get the whole thing paid. That we won't try, but I would be promising perhaps more than we could deliver if I were to say that.
I do think that, last time it was the first time this area was dredged, and that took a certain additional overhead, I think, of permitting. Now it's already dredged, marked, everything, so hopefully that'll make it a
Well,
little easier.
it's just as a general rule, like the South Florida Management District and all that, all their efforts have been sort of absorbed, all their resources have been absorbed into the big state projects. So the amounts of money that are available for localized projects has been greatly diminished. Because of the big environmental water initiatives that have been going on at the state and federal level. So that's sort of sucked up all the available funding, and available for these types of local grants have gone down significantly.
As a matter of historical perspective, when they used to do the dredging of Matanzas Pass, that sand was used on the beach. They pumped that over by pipe to the other side and renourish the whole Lynn Hall Park area, south a little bit, north a little bit. So at one point, it was compatible. But also, in those days, and I don't know whether they're still doing it, but the WCIN, the West Coast Inland Navigational District, paid for that project 100%.
Right, and as I said, we'll try.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
making a
historically, yes, you're right, and historically,
a
they've been a
small-
very good source for grant
small
money for
project.
these localized projects. But because of the Lake Go issues and Everglades restoration, a lot of other things, their allocation from the state for these localized projects has gone down significantly, because those bigger projects have, have so much focus on them and so much priority that their budget has been diminished for local grants.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your
A path.
interest in the project. And I'd just like to add one thing. I really like that sale at Times Square.
Sit down, Bruce. Okay, well, this dovetails right into the beach renourishment, but let's take a 10-minute break and then get back to it. Okay. Come back to order, 10:34. Next item is C, Beach Renourishment Project. This is the review of the beach renourishment project scope. Roger, you want to start us off on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have gotten to the point in time when we once again need to reinvigorate and reinitiate our beach renourishment efforts. Chad has been working to develop a program, and he's provided a significant amount of information for you all to review. I'm sure you have. I'll have him just give a quick overview of the project, and then respond to any questions you may have.
Good morning, Chad Schutz, environmental staff. So the beach renourishment project, the current scope is from Bowditch to Canal Street. Our markers, our monuments, 175 to 182. That will be, the sand will be coming from an offshore borough area near there. As I stated in my packet to y'all, the current scope only includes 0.2 miles of about 6 miles of beach that is designated as critically eroded by the FDEP. And the FDEP issues those permits in 15-year increments. So permitting the entire 6 miles would give the town the latitude to put sand in those areas more readily than having to re-permit those areas if we did not permit the entire area of critically eroded beach. Another benefit would also be for state funding, which is not a guarantee. However, projects are ranked from across the state. So increasing the scope of the project gives higher ranking points as you go through the statute. Things like property values, linear feet of beach, et cetera, would give the town a higher rank for that state funding criteria. So we have received $300,000 from TDC for permitting and design for the current scope. We have submitted an application to the state for 50% cost sharing, which we will hear back from the state legislature in March 2021. Any questions?
Questions for Chad?
Chad, are you in essence asking the council for direction as to whether you want to expand the permit for renourishment to the entire island? Is that in essence your ask today? Because if it is, I think it's an outstanding ask, and I commend you for your efforts, if I have it correct.
Yes, sir.
It's part of the overall go forward concept.
I think it's great, and I commend you for being so proactive on it and being so responsive. This is a great pitch, and I support it completely.
And just for clarification, so the current renourishment that we're asking for is still the 2.2 miles, and we're just asking to get the permit for the rest.
Correct. There would be associated due diligence on the front end to provide bits and that permitting.
And it seems like the areas that, I mean, you said there's a lot of it that's critically eroded, you know, except for like pretty noteworthy spots. It sounds like the areas that are really severe are the far north and the critical wildlife area.
Yes, sir.
And we're already too far down the application process to include any of that in one thing.
I'm on board.
You have consensus here? Yeah? Okay. I'll see what else to do.
Clearly, just the idea is obviously after we do the area that Canal Street is, then continue on 20 years with the other areas till we basically cover the whole island by the permit.
I was looking at the cost sheet, and you know, I mean, for what's a $6 million project, mobilization is over $2 million, and you almost pay as much for mobilization as you do for the dredging. So, you know, and I know it's not, you know, I like economy of scale, since you're gonna do it anyway, because to, as few mobilizations possible and pay for sand as opposed to,
Well, the idea, Counselor, as you're going to discuss, would be that segment A would end on Friday and segment B would start on Monday. Therefore, the contractor would not be removing their equipment and remobilizing. So it's a timing thing, and timing within ourselves and our consultant and our engineer and our contractor and the funding agencies, that once we
DC.
can get it, sort of get the gears turning, to keep them turning. That would be our intent, and we'll be working very hard to try to make that happen.
when they did the renourishment 8-9 years ago, there was a real hiccup with requiring easements to be signed by property owners. That's something we're gonna run into again.
We hope not.
The problem
No,
is gone.
Yeah, well, I think I think a couple things, and I believe, you know, you've expressed some interest in working on an initiative to, with respect to dunes and allowing people to have dunes, but make sure that the dunes don't grow to the point where they basically take over their property, and to allow them to have a walkway through the dunes so they can access the beach. So that's working on a parallel cost, of course. The demand that these be made private, I think, we have a track record to show that that's not going to be really accomplishable. So hopefully everyone will remember the wounds from the last time and not try to relive them. We'll see.
I remember the last renourishment, it seemed like in a few months after that was done, Tropical Storm Debbie came and took away a good deal of the sand that was just laid down. Or not took it away, but moved it around, as it tends to do. And I know where I am, and I measure, I look pretty carefully after the beach in front of my house, and I have pilings and I take measurements, and I'm kind of surprised that he shows as much erosion there as he reports, because my, unscientific observations don't really show that. And I think the real priority, if we did it in segments, then seems like the most critically eroded areas are the ones that really need it. The rest of it, I'm not that.
Well, obviously I can have an opinion, but in this matter, I need to rely on the experts, and I think we have a excellent consulting who's helping us with this item. As we move further down the process, we can have them come in and onto some of those.
Thanks, Chad. Good job.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. The next item is D, annual special event pass. It's an annual on-site special event permit for nonprofit properties in excess of 1.2 plus acres, $1,200 per year. Roger, you want to talk about this?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was looking to sort of dovetail on Vice Mayor's efforts to review and update our special events process. And we appreciate your support in moving that forward and implementing those changes. We think those changes will make things easier for many special event applicants. However, in looking at that, I felt that there was perhaps a further step that the council could consider. And that is for the larger pieces of property that are managed by not-for-profit entities, rather than to put them and the staff and through the rigors of applying for events, in some cases on a monthly basis. And because it's not the same event, they can't sort of squeeze in under a recurring event concept. To recognize the fact that their parcels are large enough that they don't really have neighborhood impacts. They have an event on their parcel inside and outside within their stated occupancy granted by the fire department. And to set it up so that they can basically come in once a year, simplified process, and basically be good for either a fiscal year or calendar year, so that they can have, within their established uses under their zoning, as many special events as they can. And I'm really looking towards the point when hopefully everyone is vaccinated and the COVID situation is out of control, and there'll be a lot of pent-up energy for people to get out and do stuff, and just to see if we can begin to lay a path for that to happen. It was a concept that I kind of talked to the staff a little bit about it, whether they felt it would be beneficial. They said it would be great because, instead of having 6 or 8 or 10 permits from entity A and B and C and D, it would just go one per year and one and done. And I know for the volunteers, the permit application process for these events, they're always running behind, they're always scrambling to get all the sign-offs, and so on and so forth. So it would make it a lot easier for them. But we try to look at a couple of sample properties on the island to try to, figure out what the right size is, and kind of landed at 1.2 acres. And we just landed at $1,200, nothing magical, just basically $100 a month, basically, an annual permit. So that's the concept. We welcome your input, suggestions, ideas on how perhaps to make it better. But we think that would help our administrative and operational efficiencies on our side and on their side as well.
First of all, Roger, I love the concept. I love the fact that you're making life easier for our not-for-profits on the island, who are really engaged in nothing but, quite frankly, the public good. The question I have is if it's reducing staff time and staff burden as well, which I think is another benefit of this proposal, $1,200 seems a little steep for a not-for-profit, particularly when all of their proceeds go to either other organizations or to further the public good. Is there a way we could maybe reduce that number a bit? I know it's saving them probably money from doing multiple permits, but the purpose of these permits to cover the costs of the town, not to be a revenue generator, in my personal opinion. I wondered if if that $1,200 could be reduced, particularly for not-for-profit entities, or do you believe that reflects the actual cost of staff time and staff work, and you think those numbers are equivalent? Because I hope it's not done for revenue, to gain revenue for the town. It's covering costs, that's one thing, but if it's to gain revenue, that's, especially for not-for-profits, I don't think that's as necessary. But again, commend you for the concept of making life easier for these not-for-profits.
Counselor, the typical, first of all, none of these things are really for revenue for the town, so let's be clear about that. My suggestion would be that you're concerned about the cost and absolutely minimizing the cost. And my suggestion would be for the first one, $1,200, but then the subsequent ones could go down probably to perhaps half of that, because once we sort of go through the first process and get it down pat, just to be really just an update, if you will. So the cost could go down historically after that.
When they do their annual payment or submission, whatever it is, at the beginning of their year, are they submitting all of their events at one shot, or is there a?
They don't have to tell us what they are. They just have to, we just have to be reassured that everything is properly in place. They have insurance and other things, but once it's done, we're not.
A cursory review per event.
Subsequent years would just be really getting an update of their insurance policy, making sure that nothing is substantially changed and that type of thing. That's why I feel it could be dropped perhaps by half in the second and all future years, as long as they keep it in place. We don't have to go back to an initial review. Don't take a 5-year break and then come back. Then we'd go back to the 1,200, but then.
We codify that today, that if you do it once, the next time you do it, it would be half?
Right, so this is, as you know, we're here kind of working through the details. If that's something that council supports, then when we bring this back for approval at the next regular council meeting, we would include that.
What was the go ahead.
Well, I had a couple points. First of all, we have precedent for this because we already have a type of plan in place that the Times Square merchants use for their recurring music. They don't apply for a separate permit each time they do that. So we have a precedent in place for how that works. Just trying to expand it here to the nonprofits. And I did speak to a member of the Women's Club about this idea. I was in favor of trying to come up with something like this. The idea is that we're not codifying it today. This is the brainstorming part of it. And I know when I worked on the special events ordinance, it was explained to me by staff that fees are outside of the ordinance. You don't put them in the ordinance. The fees are part of the fee schedule, which is re-examined every budget year. We approve the fee schedule, and we can change them at any time. So I think the thing is to concentrate on the plan. I'm in favor of your idea of not making money off of this, but it really is kind of two separate tracks. Follow my drift that I learned there. Then just one last comment I wanted to make for everybody's education. The diagram that's in here of the Chapel by the Sea property, they also own the lot, that small lot to the front next to Chapel Street, north of Chapel Street. It probably isn't outlined in blue because it has a different zoning designation. It used to have a business on it. Just so that everybody knows, that small piece of ground there is also part of Chapel or their acreage.
Yeah, we were just doing a little bit sensitive to have at least 1.2
Yes,
acres.
but
And
I
it did,
just,
yeah.
I didn't want everybody to get in their head that that was the case.
Understood.
And I understand why it's not included, because I think it is zoned differently, but it is still owned by the,
If the conceptual track is what we're discussing today, I love the conceptual track.
And this would be an option, right? So that if Chapel by the Sea had one event a year, you could still just apply for one permit.
That's correct.
What is the current cost for a special events permit?
Well, it depends on the
size.
the type of event, the size, the recurrence, so there's a lot of factors in that. Again, we're not making money on these. The question just really is, to what you feel is a reasonable amount, and recovering staff costs or not. There's nothing written in Ten Commandments that says we have to even recover staff costs if you don't want to.
That's good business.
I mean, if Shrimp Fest, what would that special events permit cost?
I'll be honest with you, I don't calculate those, Patty does, but if you want, I can try to see if she's available and get her here.
Trying to expand a little bit on what Jim was talking about as far as the dollar amount a year, how many they were allowed per year, try to figure out a number instead of just
Well,
throwing a
no,
number at something.
the difference like with the Shrimp Fest versus, say, something at Women's Club per se. So we have to go to 5 or 6 different entities. We have to check that they've gotten all those sign-offs, whether all those people have created any conditions and all of that type of stuff. So the amount of effort for one, that's what I'm saying, is significant. If the Shrimp Fest was every month, once you did it once, that's why the council has put in place that recurring concept, because the first one is the big one to get it all figured out and permitted and create the permit conditions. And after that, it becomes easier because it's repetitive.
We go to this, how does it affect some of the other entities that you talked about, like the fire department? On some of these special events permits, you have to have sign-offs from other entities before it even gets to the town to sign off on it.
Well, in my opinion, if the way this is contemplated is that if you stay within your occupancy, I don't know why you would need a Lee County Sheriff or Fire Department or county or anybody else to sign off on it. That's your use of your property. This whole thing was created so that we knew and the neighbors knew about the events, but I think because of social media and websites and Facebook, everyone knows about events now. So it was, the initial thing is people didn't know that there was a special event going on or whatever in terms of traffic and other things. We all now know about those things through other mechanisms. So that has been otherwise been addressed. Now, if the event holder is, let's just say, I don't know, having a fire or temporary electricity or something out there, they may still need to come in depending upon what that is. But in terms of the sort of the routine, I don't know, we're going to have a wedding at the women's club, or not-for-profit's going to have their annual meeting at the women's club. I don't know that we really need to be involved with that. I don't know that the fire department or anyone else does, as long as they stay within their occupancy.
Under our new ordinance, events that don't impact the public are not special events anymore. So if you would have a small wedding at the women's club, that wouldn't even be under our new ordinance. That was the whole one of the whole purposes of doing the new special events ordinance, was that the small things weren't going to be coming in anymore. This is a way of trying to deal with a group that wants to have larger events for fundraising purposes, use their property. We wanted to try to help them move that process along. The idea is to help them.
So, just by way of example, let's just say like the Friends of the Library, who, when it's not COVID, they have, I don't know, several book sales through the course of the year, and they want to have a banner hanging off their building about their upcoming book sales. They would come in once for the year, it'd be one and done.
I guess that's where I'm still struggling, and maybe it's just me, is I understand that this is to help the nonprofits, but where I'm getting confused is when they still have to come in. This is pretty open-ended as far as if the women's club is going to have a chili cook-off, then they still have to come in to the town to do some sort of other permitting for having potential open fire, or how does the fire department get involved in that? It just seems very open-ended to me that it's not clear.
And the point here, I believe, was to put it before you and say, are you in favor of us further exploring this idea?
Fair enough.
And
Which
then
I
all
am.
those things get worked out.
Fair enough.
So-
Maybe I'm
And I think
jumping the gun on my questions, but I'm in favor of this.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of unanswered questions. that I have.
Yeah, so, Counselor, your point is that, and one of the things as we continue to develop this concept, do you want us to be the gatekeeper for the fire department, per se?
Oh, no, I
So
understand.
my point is that if there's no need for town review, why should you all and I and John and the leadership of it be responsible for, you need permission of the sheriff, go to the sheriff. You need permission of the fire department, go to the fire department. Why am I and you guys always the tip of the spear on all these issues unnecessarily?
I understand. I
do.
Okay.
I agree with Dan, though, because the one thing is, you're the gatekeeper. And if,
Bruce us to prove it.
there may be a perception out there that the town's letting us do whatever, and if they want to, change their chili cook-off to a fireworks display, think, oh, we have a permit.
Well, we also have other codes that say what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. So, for example, you can't have fireworks display because fireworks are not allowed through our other codes. But if, let's just say you are having chili cook-off, okay? And I don't know, you're bringing in propane turkey fryer to heat your chili on that you prepare at home. Okay, I don't know that having a 5-gallon propane tank and a propane burner that you would have at your house, we need to permit that, or for that matter, that the fire department needs to permit that. But it's their purview to decide whether they want to or not.
I'll concur. I agree this is a really good thing to experiment, but I think we have to be very clear that it doesn't preempt people from getting necessary approval from the fire department or the sheriff if they need it.
We will make it clear on the permit application that, that they, depending upon the particular event, they should check with the other entities to see if have any permitting requirement.
Okay, so you'll bring this back to us in some sort of form, and,
Yeah, I encourage you all to continue to think about it, to talk to your constituents about it. And, as you receive or have some suggestions, to get them to me, so that when we next talk about it, we can incorporate as many of those as possible.
good. Okay, thank you. Okay, the final item this morning is, as always, agenda management. Anybody wish to add anything, subtract anything, miss anything? No? Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Second.
Move second. Any objection? Adjourned at 11 a.m. Thank you.